What is up, YouTube? Johnny here again today, and we are back with the IS300 build. It's been a while, so we're gonna go ahead and get straight into it. The car, after I painted it, the clear coat, you know, obviously isn't the most perfect because it's hard to do it when it's not in an oven. It's actually it has a little bit of orange peel, which is normal whenever you do paint a car, and it causes it to not have such a shiny effect. It doesn't have a reflective effect like a mirror as it should, but that's why we're gonna do this step here, which is sand buffing. So we're gonna show you a little clip of how it looks on the door from factory, you know, the factory original paint, how it has that mirror shine, and then when it transfers over to where I painted, you're gonna get to see the orange peel. So we're gonna try to go ahead and fix that orange peel to make it look like the factory paint. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Alright, so one of the reasons why we took so long to make this next video in this series is because the car that I painted was black, the IS300, and there's something that you have to do specifically with the black color because the clear coat takes a long process to dry. So in other cars I can actually just paint them one day and then the next day I can go ahead and sand buff them, but it doesn't work the same way with this because it takes the clear coat a lot longer time to dry. Most of the time they recommend that you sand it and drive it around with the car sanded, so that way the clear coat top is open and it just lets the sun dry it up faster. But I don't want to do that since I'm daily driving it. I don't want it to be looking nasty while I'm driving it. So now that we're up to this point, I'm going to show you guys how to sand buff. So I got a little table here with all kinds of little tools and compounds that I needed, pads that you need that are specifically for buffing, what sandpaper to use, and what to do basically. This is one of the simple methods that I use to get the shine out on the clear coat. There's a lot more extensive compounds that you can use just to go ahead and just continue doing tons of steps just to get it to be almost perfect. But I've seen that this gets to that level without having to go through so much steps. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and start off by showing you guys what you will need. So to start it all off, you are going to need a buffing machine. So these tend to be a little bit expensive, but if you have a friend that has one, or if you can find one online, they can be fairly cheap. I've seen them anywhere from 50 bucks to 100 bucks. You can buy a new one for 150 to 200. So it's a good investment if you're going to be doing it often. But if not, you could always find a place that'll rent one, or you can borrow one from a friend. I'm sure someone will have one. A bunch of car guys. Now, the next thing you will need is two different pads. You're going to need a wool buffing pad, which is this. This helps me out a lot just to try to get the shine back after you have sanded the clear coat. And then this one, which is a sponge, is what I use to go ahead and do the machine polish, which is what gets the shine out of the clear. This one basically removes all the scratch marks that you did with the sandpaper, and this one just brings the shine back out. So with this one, you are going to go ahead and need to use this 3M rubbing compound. So these sell for roughly around 40-45 bucks, sometimes even 50 bucks, depending on where you get them for. So you need these two. So you go ahead and use this one, obviously after you've sanded. So let's say you went ahead and started, you're going to be needing this right here, which is 1500 grit sandpaper. So this is what you sand it with. And then obviously I use a water bucket. You can go ahead and use your hose. As long as you keep it wet, it should be fine. Just go ahead and sand all of the orange peel to your desire. You don't want to sand too much, because if you sand too much, obviously you're going to go ahead and remove the whole clear coat and you're going to reach the paint, and it's going to be a big mess and you're going to have to start all over again. But that's not what we want. And then after we're done with these two, we're going to go ahead and skip to the next one. We're going to go ahead and continue with step 2, or they call it step B, which is the machine polish with this sponge pad right here. So these two go together so you can get the polish out. What this basically does is just removes really fine scratches that even the wool pad makes after removing the sandpaper scratches. So that's how we just keep slowly but surely taking out the scratches that were made to remove the orange peel and get that shine, that nice gloss like it was from factory. Alright, so the very first step that I'm going to do, since I'm not going to be removing the parts, is I'm going to tape up what I don't want to get sanded. For example, my headlights or the doors, which I'm not going to go ahead and buff because they're already, perfectly shiny. You want to go ahead and tape up as much as you don't want to get sanded. For example, the headlights, I'm going to be sanding the hood and the fender around the headlight, and you don't want to accidentally just go ahead and sand your headlight, because then you're going to have to go ahead and buff that too, and it's going to get damaged a little bit. So what I'm going to do is use this, which is called a painter's tape. It's the yellow one. It's actually really easy to remove after you have put it on, so it's good for doing jobs like this, because the stickiness or the goo won't stick to whatever you take it off of. It'll come off completely, and you won't have to worry about extra mess. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so for step 2, you're going to be needing sandpaper. So for the sandpaper that I'm going to be using is 1500 grit sandpaper. The reason is because the compound that I have, which is this 3M rubbing compound, it states that it removes grades 1200 and finer sandpaper. So the higher the number, the finer it is. So that's what it's able to remove. So you can go up to 1200 sandpaper to be able to remove this, and this will be able to remove those scratches. But I'm gonna go ahead and use 1500 because I've noticed that it's a lot easier to buff it afterwards. So in conjunction with this, you're gonna want to use a water bucket, or you can use a water hose if you don't want to be lugging around a water bucket. In this case, I'm gonna be using a water bucket just so I can wet sand it. There's some that you don't have to use water, you can just go ahead and do it dry. But like I said in a previous video, for me personally, my preference is to do it wet. It makes it a lot easier for me, and it keeps all of what you've sanded out of the sandpaper, keeps it clean, so it lasts you a little bit longer. So let's go ahead and do step 2. Yep, that sounds like downtown Phoenix for sure. Alright guys, you're going to want to sand it as much as you can, or as much as you want. The orange peel, what it does is when you sand on it, it starts grinding, it starts scratching part of the top of the surface. So if you look on, for example, the hood right here, there's an area where you can see where the sandpaper has actually scratched the clear coat, and then there's spots in between where it's still black, which means it hasn't actually gotten to that point of sanding it. And as you see on the fender, I already went ahead and sanded most of it off, and there's no more orange peel. So when I do it, it's gonna go ahead and leave a nice smooth finish. So the way that you want to do it is sand it a little bit, make sure you sand it all evenly, the whole piece that you want. Obviously it's going to be wet, so you're not going to be able to tell exactly how much you have sanded. So what I do is I take a chamois, or maybe you could take like a towel or something, dry it up, and then after it's been dried, it's going to show exactly what imperfections are left and what you want to take out. So for example, this part has no more imperfections. There's still a little bit left, for example, like this little spot or a little bit of the orange peel. You don't need to take it out completely, because when the buffer goes through it, it's obviously going to take off some of it also. So you don't have to go ahead and take it all off. If you want, you can even leave a little bit of the orange peel, just to give it a specific look depending on how the original paint was done. Some original paint comes with a little bit of orange peel. In this case, the Lexus doesn't. So I'm going to go ahead and remove most of it. I might leave a little bit, doesn't really matter, because when you're done with it, the finished product is just going to look super glossy, and you're not going to be able to see any of the little dips from the orange peel. So that's just the, you know, kind of giving you guys some lenience there to decide how much you want to sand it. After this point where it's already flat and there's no spots in between the orange peel, you don't want to sand anymore, just because of the fact that if you didn't apply too many coats of clear coat, it's gonna eat through it and you're gonna get to the paint, and we don't want that. So it's just something light, just a nice little scuffing to where it removes the orange peel, and that's it. And then that way you're gonna get the gloss. So we're done with the fender. I'm gonna go ahead and do the hood and the other fender now. But I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what to sand, how to sand it, and how to tell how much you have sanded. So it's always best to let it dry, just so you can get a good idea of how it's gonna turn out. So let's go ahead and continue. All right, so now for the third step, we're gonna go ahead and use these, which is the rubbing compound. It's classified as the A compound. And then we're gonna use this buffing pad, which is made out of wool, to go ahead and remove the fine grit sandpaper that we actually did to, the sanding that we did to remove the orange peel. This is gonna remove the sanding. So let's go ahead and get started on that. All right, guys, we are done with that step. I was able to get all the sandpaper scratch marks out. The only thing is that with the wool pad and the rubbing compound, since it's a little bit strong, it has a little bit of grit inside of it. It will leave like little swirl marks. They're really light swirl marks. You can hardly tell when you're done with it, because the shine will be there already, unless like the sun is hitting it directly. You'll actually see the little swirl marks, and then that's what we don't want. So now we're gonna move on to the next step, which is this right here. They call it the B compound. We're gonna be using it with this foam pad. So with this, what we're gonna do is actually get an even better shine and remove those little swirl marks, so that way when it's directly in the sun, you don't see those swirl marks. It just looks like a nice clean color. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright guys, that was the very last step that I do. Of course, there's a lot more steps after this if you really want to go in depth. There's one product that's called Finesse It that goes after this, or Perfect It, which either one you want to use. And then after that, there's a compound that's called Liquid Glass, which you just you just put it on with your hand. You let it sit there and dry. It turns into like a white compound. And you can do this even during the sun. It doesn't damage it. It doesn't make it stick or none of that stuff. And then you can just completely wipe it off, and that helps that shine and that feel lasts for up to a year most of the time, depending on if you're in the sun too much, stuff like that. So it's just like a little protectant that you can add to it. But for here at the lot, this is perfectly fine with me. I just do it up to this step, so where it gets that OEM look, that OEM shine. Okay, and as a last step, if you're gonna leave it just like how I left it, make sure you do not wash it. You want to at least let that sit for about 24 hours. If you wash it, it's not gonna let it settle properly and actually, blend in with your clear coat. So I know your car's gonna be dirty because mine is extremely dirty, but I'm gonna leave it like that till tomorrow, and then tomorrow I'll give it a wash, just because it can affect the shine that you left on it. If you wash it, we don't want that. So if you're just gonna stop at this step, the only thing I recommend is doing like a hand wax. Sometimes they sell like little waxes, especially for black cars, to make sure the shine stands out. That'll actually protect this a little bit more if you don't want to get into all the other compounds that you had on top, because they can get pretty expensive. As you guys have seen, some of these are 40, 50 bucks if you go look at them at a store. So it adds up pretty quickly. If you're not doing this to a lot of cars, it's not really worth it. So just with that, it's perfectly fine. So as always, thank you guys for watching. You guys have a great day.